Welcome to Roundhouse Roulette, a Walker, Texas Ranger podcast. Each week we recap and review one of the 200 existing Walker, Texas Ranger episodes randomly selected by Roundhouse Roulette. I'm Evan Dalton, here with my brother Adam and our friend who may or may not be in protective custody, Mr. Bob Leahy. What's new, guys?
What's up?
Hey, not much. I can't really say how I am.
Oh, yeah. Don't make any phone calls to any of your extended family, all right?
Okay, yeah, no, I won't.
Yeah. Zoom calls are fine, but anything else, it's never going to end well for you. Mm-mm. Well, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us as we revisit Chuck Norris's sensational sound effects showcase. Today, we'll be recapping and reviewing Season 8, Episode 3, Safe House, where the Rangers find themselves fending a mobster's henchman away from a family that's in protective custody. But before we double-check our rearview mirrors for helicopters and hot pursuit, join us as we pull up a stool at CD's Bar and Grill. Hey, fancy meeting you guys in this fine establishment.
Yeah, man. Just glad to be here.
Again.
Start that again.
Okay. Any day that you're in CD's Bar and Grill is a great day, right?
Yeah, especially, I myself have thought about writing my own memoirs during this time, and, CD's kind of an inspiration to me.
Well, I think you should get those things written down on the pages. Well, this week, CD is dishing out a fine bat squatch by Rogue Ales in Newport, Oregon. The Bar and Grill draft menu states that this is perfect for camping and potentially making a new friend. This juicy, cloudy IPA features intense tropical flavors and aromas. You guys ready to crush this can of Cryptid?
You know it.
I'm batty for it. Let's do it.
I will say, before anyone even touches this thing, if we're rating these things on the artwork on the can, this is an A+.
Oh, yeah. This is definitely the best can I might have ever seen. It's got a bat squatch, which is kind of like a Sasquatch and bat combined. And they even have like a history on the can. For years, rumors have circled that deep in the woods of Mount St. Helens lives the fabled bat squash. While there are many tales of bat squash, they are all a bit hazy on the details. Oh, see what they did there. Which makes the truth such a juicy mystery. Also see what they did there. So what better way to honor the legend than with a hazy, juicy IPA?
On the nose right there.
Yeah, wow. So I guess apparently this is a legend that exists.
One can only imagine. I'm super big into any sort of cryptid that's out there, so I'm all for the bat squatch.
It's a little hazy. Not as hazy as some I've seen.
It does smell like orange juice or like passion fruit juice.
Yeah, this is good. It's kind of a chill, hazy IPA. Nothing too extreme as far as hops. It says on the can you could... it pairs with grilled salmon, so I totally could see that. And maybe a strawberry shortcake in white cheddar. Those are the suggested pairings.
Because I prefer my strawberry shortcake topped with salmon.
Yeah.
Served with a juicy bat squash.
No, just pour it all over it. Mix them all together.
It pairs well with a Walker, Texas Ranger podcast, though. I can attest to that.
So, the legends are true?
I'll say this is a legend that I'd like to revisit.
Indeed.
Well, for those of you out there following us on social media or who just live at roundhouseroulette.com like we do, we dropped Evan's blog, The Many Tropes of Chuck Norris's Walker, Texas Ranger. This is going to be a working glossary of kind of some terms that we've come across that are recurring themes and tactics of Walker, like the Walker talkie and obviously roundhouse kick. I put it out there and I was saying, hey, did we miss anything? And Austin Decker reached out on Facebook and he said, the Walker does your job better than you theme. See Devil's Turf or Team Cherokee. I gotta say, he's right, because, I mean, he was a substitute teacher and literally turned the whole school around in 1 week.
That's true. He got all the kids to take the AP test.
And in the episode Team Cherokee, which we haven't done on the podcast yet, he literally subs for a NASCAR driver.
Perfect.
So I don't know what we'd call that, but I also pointed out that, Walker does also deliver a baby in an episode, so he could also potentially be at least a midwife.
Yeah. And, at the very least, I think most midwives would probably be better at delivering babies than Walker. But would a midwife also defend you with a handgun right after you had that baby? Probably not.
No, he's like a Swiss Army knife for situations.
he's a jack of all trades, master of all trades. We got another one to put on there. We're going to be putting it on pretty soon. The verb that we coined, I believe, in last week's episode, Lazarusing.
yeah, that's definitely got to be on there.
Which is, when a simple hit just won't do. Sometimes you just got to throw someone off a building.
I also had a few that we had talked about before, which are not on there. We've got window evac, which is when Walker knows there's going to be a bomb and he just busts through the glass window.
At just the right time.
And then we've also got bound with a bomb.
We've seen both of those many times.
So those are some other ones that we came across that aren't on the glossary yet. But it's a working glossary, so, check back every day.
I check twice a day. When you get up and before you go to bed, just make sure.
Yeah.
For the record, Bob is disappointed quite often.
Yeah.
We'd like to give a little bit of a shout out to a couple of our super fans, Molly and Eric, for pre-ordering the official Roundhouse Roulette t-shirt. If you're interested in pre-ordering one of those puppies, or at least checking out what it looks like, you can find it on our website, roundhouseroulette.com. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, we're doing a pre-order so we can print it at a local print shop, a mom and pop shop here in Nashville that are really good people. So we're just trying to get it together, and yeah, that's the deal.
And if you want to know what it looks like on someone with weird communist tattoos, I strongly urge you to check out our online shop.
He was definitely the coolest looking model and most distinguished, but he does have... it is a communist tattoo.
He looks like if Jason Momoa sold communist-themed tacos out of a truck.
No, that's parked at a record store.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to be placing that order soon. But if you want to help us out and get an order in, that's cool. If you don't, and you just want to check out the weird tattoos, check out our shop. Speaking of which, we also, kind of more so as a joke, made up the Ranger Teen Camp sweatshirt that was in the episode Last Hope that pretty much everybody wore at the teen camp, and put it up as a made-to-order print via our website. So if you're brave enough to rock one of those sweatshirts, it's available. We just wanted it to be out there if somebody did want to start Ranger Teen Camp. That's what we're trying to do here. And if one person buys this sweatshirt, I could die a happy man. Because, look, this is a life brand for us.
It's a life brand for Adam.
I don't have much else going on.
So, yeah, in response to our podcast on the episode Black Dragons, we heard from our superfan Kenny. Said, love this episode of the podcast. You guys rock. Next week's episode, Safe House, is one of my favorites, even though it's pretty ridiculous. I can't wait. Well, Kenny, it was pretty ridiculous. We'll get to that later.
Well, Kenny, you might be happy to hear this. For anybody who uses Spotify, they always come up with your top songs of the year. And I checked mine out today, right? And pulled it up. And number one on my top songs of 2020 is Saturday Night Bowling. No lie. I did a screenshot for you guys. I played it that many times.
I don't know how to feel about that. First of all, I can see the screenshot that you haven't favorited that. That's not saved to your library, so you want to go ahead and do that.
And also, as a musician, it's terrible because it taints your top song. So we played the Grateful Dead's Europe 72 in its entirety at the beginning of the year. So I listened to that album like 20 times, probably.
Yeah.
And it's just messed my stats up. But you know what stat it didn't mess up? Saturday Night Ballin', number one, baby. Bob, when we were going to college, we'd catch Conan rocking the Walker lever.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I kind of stopped watching TV after college and kind of lost track of Conan. I've recently, the past year or so, been listening to his podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. And I highly recommend it. It's pretty classic. Have you heard it, Bob?
Oh, let's do it every week, yeah.
It's probably one of the only podcasts I actually laugh out loud sometimes. I'm like, man, I miss Conan in my life. So I actually have been listening to it since it debuted about a year or so ago. I was like, you know what? I'm going to send them a message and see if we might be able to get in touch with the poor guy who had to watch all the Walker Texas Ranger episodes for the Walker lever to get the clips for it, okay? So, after we'd done this podcast for a few months, I reached out just to put a line out there. I was like, well, I could message and see what happens. Nothing happens. I also saw they have this other podcast, Inside Conan, an important Hollywood podcast. And it's hosted by two of the Conan writers, Mike Sweeney and Jesse Gaskell. And they have various people who have worked on Conan over the years come on. And this last week, I listened to 2 interviews with Robert Smigel, a.k.a. Triumph, the Insult Comic Dog. So it was cool to listen to those. And I was like, oh, that was great. Well, I checked my feed today, and the dude who literally watched the Walker clips and created Eagleheart is interviewed on there, Andrew Weinberg. So I listened to the podcast, and yeah, he talks about how pretty much he and another guy were tasked with watching all of Walker and finding the clips so that they could pull the lever every night. And they were like, please stop having us watch Walker. And Conan would go on vacation. And while he was on vacation, all he ever heard was, we need more Walker. So he'd come back from vacation and he'd be like, guys, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go back and get some more Walker clips. So it was his job to do that. And I guess they had been running it for about a year, and then they took a little break, and then that happened again. And then that's when they found the Haley Joel Osment clip of Walker, I Have AIDS. And so he was like, sometimes you just need to go back to the well to find the magic. I highly recommend checking out that podcast. We'll link up to it. It's Inside Conan and Andrew Weinberg. Check it out. But there's another guy that started the show, Eagleheart, with him. And for those who don't know, Eagleheart is kind of like a spoof on Walker, if that's even possible. And I've been working my way through it. They're about 10-minute episodes, and they were on Adult Swim and star Chris Elliott as a Walker-esque marshal. And it's insane. But it's not so insane that you aren't like, well, that's kind of exactly how it is on Walker sometimes.
Yeah.
So I've been working my way through it, but if anyone wants to check out that show, it's actually available for free streaming, all 3 seasons, on adultswim.com. So, I'm hoping that someday we'll be able to have Andrew on the show to do a deep dive into Walker, because they did a great job inside Conan, but they didn't really get inside Walker with him. And I think, Andrew, we'd love to have you on to dig into this and Eagleheart, because I feel like Eagleheart was designed for me, this show. It's insane. I'm loving it.
Well, we've got a lot to cover this week, so let's get into it. If you're watching along at home and don't want any spoilers, hit pause and watch Season 8, Episode 3, Safe House. Then come right on back to us. Welcome back. Let's dig in. This episode originally aired on October 9th, 1999, and opens on some impressive fountains outside of a bank.
It certainly does. And this bank is like the East Asian Bank or something. It's some weird name.
Yeah, definitely a fake name for a bank, I would say.
It was good. Yeah, we see like a guy, like a janitor outside sweeping. We see like a woman on a bench with her baby. Then we kind of get inside the bank and see a bunch of goons with pantyhose over their face, naturally, and semi-automatic weapons kind of scurrying out of the bank. I'm presuming they robbed it?
Yeah, that's correct.
It's a pretty safe assumption. I mean, yeah, the scene would look pretty idyllic under normal circumstances, but the music that was playing was extremely tense, so you knew something bad was going to happen. And you hear a woman scream, which I swear I've heard that scream a million times. That's like the female version of the Wilhelm scream.
It's the Wilma scream?
Maybe, yeah. As Adam said, these bank robbers, they come busting out of this place with pantyhose on their face, and they think they've gotten out scot-free, but it's an ambush.
So the woman on the bench with the baby in the stroller, that's actually Sydney. And she pushes the baby carriage right in front of one of the robbers and trips him. The baby flies out of the carriage. It's not a real baby. And she proceeds to fight him. And throughout the whole fight, the plastic baby is down at the foreground of the shot. It's so good.
And the janitor, it's not a janitor, it's Gage.
Oh, man.
Gage just like tackles a guy, and I think just for the lulz, he just tackles the guy into a fountain so that they're fighting in the fountain. Another guy thinks he got away, and a leg comes out of nowhere. And that leg is attached to Chuck Norris. And that guy gets a savage beating. Season 8 is playing out where, like, they have these fight sequences where Walker, Trivette, Sydney, and Gage are all at some sort of bust, and each one of them has their own fight.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I approve.
I don't dislike it.
Yeah, this episode really hit the ground running.
Oh, yeah. And you might be like, well, all right, so like, what's Trivette up to then? And all of a sudden you see Trivette, and he's parked right outside of the getaway car, and the guy gets out of the getaway car. His first mistake, because then he's sucker punched by Trivette. The force of the sucker punch bowls the guy over the hood of the car. Lots of thunder punches and thunder kicks.
Yeah,
so
the
good.
sound effects were so extreme. They actually sounded like they got louder over the course of the episode. The punching and stuff is obviously louder than dialogue, but over the course of the episode, the sound editor's like, oh man, I better just keep ramping up the volume.
How many times can I hit the thunder button?
You think he has it like it's on middle C of his keyboard?
Yeah, for sure.
It was an amazing fight. It's worth checking it out. They take care of the guys and everything, and that plot line really has nothing to do with this episode. Boy, am I glad they added that in here.
There was one other sound effect, too. I think it was Sydney was like a finishing move against some guy. He kicks him against this pole, and there was the boxing bell, you know?
Yeah, it's like, gong!
Because he hit his head in the pole. That was clever.
It seems like the Texas Rangers were sent in to take out these bank robbers, and once they just pretty much just wrecked house, and these guys are just like all laid out on the ground outside this bank, then the police come and clean it up, and then they're all just kind of hanging out. Like
They do all the
fun.
paperwork, you know?
Yeah.
Gage is like, oh, Sydney, real motherly instincts, throwing the baby in front of a bank robber with a Uzi. You know, just to have it splayed out on the ground. And he throws her the plastic baby, and everyone's laughing at her. You know what? We can't have Trivette laughing at Sydney. So she tosses the baby to Trivette, and it says, Mama, Mama.
And tables have turned. Now everyone's laughing at Trivette.
Which is what we're used to.
Right, that's...
The power dynamic.
Wow.
So, you know, of course, they're basking in their glory and their recent victory over a basket of nondescript food at CD's and a round of drinks that it's quite a variety, but none of them are beers.
Yeah.
You know, a Texas Ranger, they're on the clock 24/7. They can't be drinking.
There's a great close-up of CD at the end of the episode. They have this neon light. I pulled it up here. You guys see the neon sign in CD's bar?
yeah.
Nice.
Oh,
Fake
look,
when
yeah.
you drink.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good.
Yeah. I think it's good that they don't sensationalize drinking on Walker, and they tell you to think when you drink.
When you order a long neck, man, make sure you got a DD.
And make sure it's CD.
CD, the DD. I like it. So yeah, they're all gloating about their recent victory, and you know, CD feels left out, so he feels the need to bring up a story of when he and Walker were partners when Walker was a young whippersnapper. They had CD pose as a Santa Claus to bust some bank robbers. And that prompted the Rangers to kind of goad him on, and they basically told him that he should write a book. He kind of took to that idea. He was into it.
And for some reason, Trivette was like a little angry that CD was going to write a book, because he kind of wanted to write a book. You know, again, stealing Trivette's thunder. And of course, everyone's just like, well, Trivette, you don't have the stories or the sass that CD has. Dadgummit.
Dadgummit.
So true. So true. So everyone's having a good time, having a good
Now
laugh.
that's just about enough out of you, young man.
So everyone's having a good laugh at CD's expense. And then Alex walks in as a rolling party foul. Oh, you guys having a good laugh about something? Let me tell you something horrible that's happening. Remember that really horrible crime boss that you almost busted? Well, his attorney is actually willing to testify because they tried to kill him. So you have to pick him up on the border. Gage and Sydney are like, oh, what's this all about? And, you kind of expect Trivette to just tell a story. Trivette doesn't tell a story. He starts to, and then it goes into full-on flashback mode. And we get another fight scene where he and Walker go to pick this guy up. The guy's name is Vince Turman, but throughout the entire episode, everyone is pronouncing it differently. So I have no idea. I get really confused.
Vince Thurman.
Right, or Turman. Termine. This guy, they go to arrest him and for murder. And of course, Texas Rangers show up, and unlike other law enforcement officers, we went over this. If you fight them and win, you get off scot-free. So everyone's kind of taking their shots. This episode features so many 300-pounders in plaid shirts and dad jeans with like the nasty mullet. There's so many of them. So they arrest this guy, but his star witness gets Lazarused, and no one can prove that there was any foul play. So he got off scot-free. It's made pretty clear that this accountant, since he's a star witness, is like priority number one. So instead of Walker and Trivette going to pick up the star witness at the Louisiana border, they send Gage and Sydney. And Gage and Sydney seem to be taking their time, and that makes a difference here.
So this accountant is Turman's accountant, and the Louisiana State Police are driving him up to Texas, and they just crossed the border. They have the accountant, his wife, and a daughter who looks like Blossom. She was picking flowers outside of the Louisiana State Police car at the Texas border, awaiting handoff of her deadbeat accountant father who was doing accounting work for this crime lord. And the accountant and his wife are waiting in the cop car, and the accountant's like, help me, how do I look? How's my shirt look? I want to make sure I look presentable for the Texas Rangers.
I know, it's weird.
Who says that?
Because the Texas Rangers are definitely not going to pick you up in a button-down shirt and Carhartts.
Yeah, he was in like a suit. Anyway, that was really strange. I thought that was strange. So respect, man. Yeah. So the daughter kind of heads back to the car, and the husband's like, I'm sorry I got you guys in this position, and I'm going to try to make it up to you, and hopefully with the Texas Rangers, we'll be safe. And, we know what's going to happen here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We knew it was going to happen. And I tell you, I was excited that they were in the woods.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We pan over to some other people that just happen to be in the woods. There's a few guys in plaid shirts, so they're definitely good guys.
Yeah, the guys in plaid shirts, dead giveaway. The initial dead giveaway is the black Chevy Tahoe, which
I think it's Suburban.
Yeah, which is the official bad guy vehicle.
I was thinking about this after I watched this today. We should check the plate on that car.
That's true.
I can almost guarantee you it's in many other episodes.
It's up there with the prop Uzi.
Yeah, which I think we see in this episode
a few times. Oh, yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. So these guys have, the two of the guys in plaid have, shotguns or they're assault rifles, right?
Yeah, they're like AK-47s.
And then there's this, kind of skeezy guy who we found out his name is Scully. He's the head goon of this episode. And what happens here?
Well, they just start raining fire upon this police car, right? And then one thing I love is that the guys with the AK-47s or whatever, they're shooting from the hip. They have the gun way down and just
it's like
you can't aim like that.
A lowrider kind of thing, like with the guys who play guitar with guitars down at their knees kind of thing. And I think what happened is the crime lord Turman called Scully and said, "How's it going?" And he's like, "Oh, we found him." He's like, "Do you want me to kill the girl?" He's like, "No, I want her to be able to ID you later. What do you think?" He's like, "Okay." So then the guys start laying fire into the accountant, who is going to testify against this guy if they don't kill him. The accountant and his wife and his daughter are in the backseat of the cop car, and they just start crouching down as the bullets shoot all the glass and are like piling through the doors. And it's just insane. The two Louisiana state troopers jump out and they start returning fire, but they really couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And they're systematically taken out by these bad guys. All the while, more and more bullets are piling into this car, and you're like, man, this car looks like a piece of Swiss cheese. These guys must have gotten hit, right? But before we could even inspect that, Gage and Sydney's car pull up to the scene.
They take care of business pretty quickly. I think one of the main themes of this episode is terrible aim.
Oh my God, yes.
But yeah, they come in, and after a protracted firefight, they take out two of the goons, but Scully's able to escape. And they're able to get this accountant, whose name is Lloyd Allen, and his family into their vehicle. And Lloyd Allen has, in fact, been hit by a bullet, but he's only been grazed in such that they just, put some fake blood on his hand.
And I loved how, Gage and Sydney were like, are you guys all right? Are you guys all right? And the daughter and the accountant and his wife are standing, outside of the Swiss cheese Louisiana cop car. And there are two dead Louisiana policemen at their feet. No acknowledgement of them at all.
Right.
I think Gage, kind of passively acknowledged the loss of one of them.
Yeah, he, checked his pulse or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, let's get out of here. But they're like, you were just grazed. They kind of had a hopeful vibe after being saved by the Texas Rangers,
On the road again.
Yeah. Well, right after they're saved, the wife is like, oh no, we're always going to be dealing with this. They're going to find us no matter what. And the husband was like, oh, it's going to be okay, which is odd because in a minute, the attitudes will be completely switched.
Exactly. But I mean, granted, what happens next might change your opinion and outlook on life as well.
That's for sure. So Scully calls in to his boss, Vince Terman, and he's all like, these Rangers showed up. They took out two of my guys. And Terman's like, I don't care about your guys. You got to get these guys out of here.
Not just two of his guys, two of his best guys.
That's true. Yeah, they're all his best guys. Come on. Plaid shirts and denim jeans. They literally grow on trees. So then Terman's like, mobilize the helicopter. And I'm like, yes. Yes.
You instantly know that Gage and Sydney are going to have a helicopter in the rear view mirror.
Yeah, and Scully gives him the intel. He's like, yeah, they're in a gold government issue vehicle. So yeah, we see them riding along very happily in the car after they've been saved. And they're like, oh, our daughter is diabetic. She gets hungry. We left the food in the car. And they're like, oh, we can stop at this gas station for some food. It's like, come on, guys. Don't do that. Never do that. But they did it. And it gave Lloyd a chance to tell his backstory.
We get a little flashback number 2 here.
So yeah, Lloyd is driving around with his family in their black station wagon.
It's an early 90s Ford Taurus.
Yeah, the classic. For some reason, his wife is in the back seat with their daughter. I think that's so the cameraman can sit in the front seat.
I know.
Good point.
Yeah.
They're cruising along, and who should pull up behind them but Scully, who tries to run them off the road. And there's a very long car chase scene here.
It went on way too long, though. He's constantly just fishtailing. Both cars are just constantly bumping and fishtailing, and it just goes on forever.
But I liked seeing the Ford Taurus, its odometer go up to 65 and then being like, oh no,
whoa.
Yeah, the first shot of the odometer is it going from 45 to 50. And I'm like, yeah, that's about top speed for that station wagon.
Well, yeah, it was nice to see that puppy perform out there,
It did.
See the suspension, see how it handles.
And then when he spins him off the road at the end and the Ford Taurus just goes a 180.
It didn't really crash or anything, just went into the ditch a little bit.
So Scully gets out and he's about to shoot the accountant, and he's easily scared off by an approaching police car. That saved him. And apparently the Louisiana State Police saved the accountant's life. And so that's what made him turn himself over to the authorities to escape the hit that he now knows was put out on him.
Now, he described Scully, and when he described Scully, I knew immediately what would happen at the end of the episode. He describes him as an ex-prize fighter named Scully. So you hear that, and you're like, okay, he's going to face off with Walker.
Yeah.
So, he's like, oh, man, I just don't think I'm going to survive to the end of the day, and I just don't want my family to get dragged into this. And Gage is like, don't worry. I've never lost a witness, and I don't plan on starting. So, they're all good and happy. They get back in their car, and of course, they've wasted valuable time here. And as they're cruising along the highway, Sydney looks in her rearview mirror and notices an approaching helicopter in walker formation. And by walker formation, we mean with a goon hanging out both doors with a machine gun.
And I love how the family in the back seat was like, kind of like, oh, we've gotten through it. We're good.
Yeah, that's all good.
Then you're like, no, you guys have no idea. There's a helicopter coming. And then when they show it in the rearview mirror, you're just like, oh, this is unbelievable.
Definitely the high point of the episode. The next few minutes.
She's all like, Gage, look, your rearview mirror.
You would have heard that?
Right. So Sydney gets into like full-on flight attendant mode. She turns to the back seat and she's like, okay, I need you guys to stay calm, put your heads down, and keep your daughter between you. And they're like, what's happening? And they soon find out what's happening.
The mother sneaks a peek and then sees the helicopter with guys with machine guns coming at them. And then they look down and they're like, oh, crap. So they start raining fire down on the cars as Gage is trying to drive as fast as he can. Sydney's like, well, the only way we're going to get out of this is if I start returning fire. And she does something that is usually done by bad guys as Walker chases them. The bad guy usually puts his whole body outside of the passenger side of a door and starts firing guns at Walker. Well, this time Sydney does that, and she's firing at a helicopter with two guys who are shooting machine guns at her. And her good aim from earlier is now Stormtrooper.
There's like no aiming whatsoever. It's just like shoot in the general direction and that's all good. Like we'll hit something at some point. So I will say that Gage does something that is pretty uncommon in this show, in that as soon as they're under attack, he immediately radios Walker for backup. Like no one ever calls for backup on this show.
It did seem kind of strange now that you mention it. Yeah.
It was a pretty extreme situation, though.
For sure. It definitely requires Walker. So, yeah, no one can shoot for anything. Sydney's attempts to fire back, she actually hits a light underneath the helicopter.
And, we've seen this situation before when Walker's being chased by a helicopter. This isn't the first time we've seen this. And they always shoot out like a light on the front of the helicopter.
Like, we've spent a lot of money renting this helicopter for the day. We don't want to blow it up, and we don't want to damage it. So we're going to bust this light, and that's about it. In response to the busted light, they said, oh, man, Mr. Terman's going to be super pissed that our helicopter's gotten damaged, so let's pull back a little bit. Yeah. And so they disappear from view.
And then we see a shot of, like, the road up ahead is like those hills where you can't see over the horizon. And you're like, yeah, the helicopter's going to be waiting for him on the other side of those hills.
Again, they couldn't have kept an eye on the helicopter.
Yeah, they didn't see it?
They just lost
loop
it.
ahead of them.
They couldn't.
Well, their mirrors were shot out, so they couldn't
She
couldn't possibly have kept watching it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So yeah, of course they come over a hill and the thing's waiting for them. And Gage plays chicken with it. But just as they're passing by it, the bad guys finally stop the vehicle with a well-placed bullet, which apparently makes the hood of the car explode. And the hood has an explosion underneath it and pops up. And then you see a clip of Gage and Sydney for like a half a second.
Yeah, like 2 frames.
Yeah, 2 frames. And it's got like synthetic or like fake flames superimposed over their faces.
That was real bad.
Really
it was like
weird
the same
looking.
Flames they used at the Last Hope inside the limousine when that guy blew up.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then they're sort of forced to the side of the road. You think all hope is lost until a giant gray Dodge pulls up.
Apparently, the helicopter doesn't have a rear view because they literally pull up right behind it. Walker and Trivette come out. They brace themselves on the side of the truck, and they start placing single shots. And Walker's first shot connects with the guy with the machine gun on the side of the helicopter, and he falls down and is hanging off the side by a security strap, dangling. Then Trivette He's like, oh, you're a good walker, but I can do that too. Does the same exact thing on the right side of the helicopter. So both goons with machine guns are just like taken out with a single bullet after Sydney had been shooting for at least like 2 miles at these guys. And they're literally just like playing possum hanging off the side of the helicopter. It was awesome. And then after that happens, the guy who's flying the helicopter is like, wow, we better get out of here. And they
that didn't go well.
they just show the helicopter fly off into the horizon with these guys hanging off the side.
I give those stunt performers all the credit in the world for doing that, but it looked really dumb.
I know.
Why would they even have the harnesses? Normally, they would just fall when they got killed.
These guys, they think ahead, and Terman, he's all about workplace safety. If you're going to be shooting out of a helicopter, put your harness on. It's very important. So, although Lloyd Allen and his family are quite shaken up, they are still in one piece, thanks to Walker and Trivette, really. And this witness is going to squawk come hell or high water. And at his mansion, we see Terman. He's pretty upset about this whole thing. We see his weaselly lawyer who he wants to get out.
And Terman's like, hey, I put you through law school and you're going to bail on me now? Terman's like standing in his office next to like this giant giraffe that is there for no reason.
It's a little weird.
Yeah. And he's like, look, you want to leave? That's what the accountant was trying to do. You sure you want to leave? And then the lawyer's like, oh, yeah, I kind of don't want to have Scully out for me.
True.
He was a prize fighter,
He's an ex-prize fighter. That's true.
Definitely X.
So, yeah, the lawyer wants out. Things seem to be falling apart. And back at the precinct, Lloyd Allen is having his little talk with Alex about how he's going to testify. And he's like, man, I'm just worried. I just don't think I'm going to make it to trial. You don't know Vince Terman. And Alex is all like, you don't know the Texas Rangers.
Oh, no.
Snapperonis.
That might have been... That's probably the first of the 2 cringeworthy Alex moments in this episode.
And while Alan's doing this, his wife and daughter are hanging out with the Rangers, and she's using MS Paint to create a family portrait, and Trivette's able to print it out on his dot matrix printer for her, so it's really nice.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good drawing.
No, it wasn't.
No.
And also, she this is a plot point, she also needs insulin shots.
Right. She's
which
diabetic.
is why they stopped to get food.
It's supposed to be a plot point, but it's really not.
That's one of the things they sneak in there just in case.
Like, I guess they had to stop for food, so that's how the helicopter caught up.
Exactly. And it's also, well, later it also helps out, too, with another plot point.
And it's educational, too. Guys, think about it.
So educational.
People have diabetes. You got to remember.
Wilford Brimley is actually in the show, too, so...
Oh, yeah, he's CD, right?
Yeah, he's CD.
Yeah. Right.
Hate mail.
No.
We wouldn't be so lucky as to get hate mail.
Yeah, Noble Willingham is the real CD. But in the pilot, he doesn't play CD. Do you know who plays CD in the pilot, Bob?
I do not.
The chef who has a recipe for eggs erroneous.
All right. Okay, yeah. Ernest Goes to Camp.
Yep. That
Nice.
actor who plays one of the chefs on Ernest Goes to Camp plays CD only in the pilot. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, we have not mentioned the side plot.
Nor will we.
Yeah. There's a side plot where Trivette wants to write a book with Walker, and Walker clearly doesn't want to write a book. And so he's trying to direct Trivette in other directions, like collaborating with CD or doing something else. And it's very much like the side plot in the last episode we watched about buying a tux.
Yeah.
It kind of comes to a punchline at the end, but the side plot or the random bits of plot we get from that would only serve to distract us from our main purpose, which is delivering the action to you, valuable listeners.
Yeah.
They use it like punctuation in the story,
Yes.
And
It's
also
just-
to remind us that Walker and Trivette are still in the episode. So
And best
Yes.
friends.
They're BFFs.
Yeah.
So now the family is getting taken to the safe house, and Walker and Trivette are going to arrest Terman. And they show up to Terman's place, and once again, classic Siege, where Terman's packing up to get out of town, and
his lawyer's there still, too.
Yeah. And they get a call from, I guess, the gatehouse or something. They're like, Ranger's coming your way. And so Terman says to his lawyer, stall them for 5 minutes. It's all I need.
Yeah. So the lawyer's like, hey, I'm going to need to see your paperwork, Walker. And Walker's like, oh, we've got a warrant to search. So he walks right past him. And then all these goons start rushing him and Trivette. Again, with sound effects on point.
So many thunder punches.
They take him out, and there's like the grimace. I paused it this episode. The grimace that Trivette has when he's throwing punches is unbelievable. He's like, like he's straining so hard to punch. It's great. But if that's what happens, like that sound comes out of that punch, that straining was worth it.
So worth it.
So meanwhile, Terman is headed towards his helicopter, and you're like, oh man, he's gonna get away. And he's headed up there. He gets in a helicopter. And all of a sudden, what do we see, Bob?
I saw him running towards that helicopter. I'm like, yes, this is totally going to happen. And sure enough.
Yep. Sure enough, the helicopter gets off the ground and Walker's running towards it. And you're like, oh, please, 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 please. Walker jumps, grabs the bottom of the helicopter as it's off the ground and keeps ascending. And as it's ascending, he climbs into the helicopter. And it looked pretty real. I mean, someone did it, obviously, but it looked like it was him, though.
Up to the jump, I think it might have been.
I rewound it a couple of times to see if I could see one, but it totally looks like the stunt performer is jumping off of like a springboard.
Yeah.
It's just like an insanely powerful jump.
Doesn't look like there's a harness or anything. He literally is pulling himself into the helicopter while it's off the ground, pulls out a gun, and then forces the helicopter down the ground. Unbelievable. As if we didn't already have enough awesome helicopter action earlier.
After the scene, I like immediately was just like, all right, we're going back to CDs. I forgot about the house. And I was like, that's it. The episode's over. That's great. I mean, I was like, good. All right, here we go. And I was like, oh, right.
The name of the episode is called Safe House, okay? And at this point in the episode, there's only 15 minutes left when they showed the safe house for the first time.
Right, yeah.
So in this safe house, Sydney and Gage have the duty of sort of watching over the family. And they have a few ground rules. Stay away from windows and don't make any phone calls. That's basically it. But, of course, not only does the family stay close to windows and not avoid windows when we see them there, but also the wife immediately calls her mother.
While the husband is called downstairs because Alex comes to visit with the insulin, and he needs to administer the shots.
That's right.
If he was with her, he told her not to call anybody, so she wouldn't have been able to make the call. So, writers, good on you for that one.
So she's having a conversation with her mother, who should be listening in. But
Scully.
An ex-prize fighter named Scully.
Supposedly, he's sitting outside the mother's house in a car with a computer hooked up to her telephone line.
Yep. It's a real shot in the dark.
Yeah, he didn't have. Yeah, I mean that's why he's a professional, though. So pretty much, he's listening to the phone call, and the computer's like do 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 do, and the numbers for the phone number are coming up, and it's like traced. So he has the phone number that called the mother, and he's able to find the safe house because he's able to pin that phone number to the safe house.
Once he does that, he calls Terman.
And this is in jail, by the way.
Yeah, he's in custody.
And he was just happened to be visiting Terman, the lawyer, when this phone call happened.
And the lawyer's all like, I think you need to take a deal. They've got this witness, and you're in custody. And Terman hears from Scully, I got the trace. Terman's all like, you can tell them they can take their deal and stick it.
Which presumably he does. Verbatim,
True.
Right?
True.
And like any good lawyer does, that he doesn't.
Yeah. He's not pulling any punches.
No, he's not.
Yeah. So I think Adam is sort of overselling the technological advances of 1999. It took Scully an entire night to basically connect a phone number to an address.
Which I don't know how you would do that.
Although in reality, it's possible he did it right away and then spent the rest of the night compiling a crew of goons.
Again, another sideline here is like kind of this weird domestic bliss thing between Gage and Sydney. Like they're like an old married couple. Every time that like Gage and Sydney, they're like, are you going to cook? You're going to clean. It's like, it was like the Cheaters, like guitar riffs and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah, it's comic relief, you know? Yeah, their relationship is very strange. It's like the writers didn't know what to do. They're like, well, are they like will they, won't they? Or are they like brother and sister? Or are they like best friends or partners? The lines are quite blurred.
Yeah. They're kind of all of these things, really.
Yes.
In some creepy way.
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable. I'll say that.
It's confusing for sure. Anywho, so Gage just finished cooking up some French toast, which is one of his specialties.
Yeah, he's also good at raisin toast.
And cinnamon toast.
And rye toast.
Yeah, rye toast.
Hey, you guys got them all. Good work.
They made the French toast, and they just finished up, and everyone was about to start cleaning, and Gage looks out a window and sees a couple of dudes in plaid shirts. One of them's got a freaking rocket launcher.
Two of them have rocket launchers.
It's pretty ridiculous.
Now, is that a rocket launcher or a bazooka?
Yeah.
Or are they one and the same?
I would say bazooka, but the CGI projectile that flies out of it later on is clearly a rocket.
You know, and the first thing, like, so when Scully pulls up with all his goons and they're getting out with the rocket launcher, and there's one skeezy guy with the Uzi who comes out.
Yep.
But one of the guys who has one of the rocket launchers looks like the Mr. Pillow guy, you know. And I was thinking of what Mondo said last week when we talked to him, that the show Walker Texas Ranger would literally come up to you and say, oh, you're selling your house. Do you mind if we buy it from you and blow it up?
That's right.
So the moment I saw that rocket launcher, I'm like, no way. That's all I could think.
I also flashed back to when we first saw the house, and I was like, I could have told you then that this house was going to go. It's like kind of banged up and like, yeah, they're going to blow this house up. I knew it.
It's a goner. It doesn't have much furniture in it.
No. So he sees this out the back window and he's like, Sydney! And Sydney immediately draws her piece and gets everybody to head to the back door so that they could all sneak out the back door. And Gage doesn't trust that the girl can walk on her own and picks her up.
Scoops her up like really like a rag doll.
Like a sack of flour.
Yeah. And bolts out the door. And just as he gets out the door, we see two rocket launchers shoot into the house, and the whole house erupts in this giant explosion that engulfs behind Gage. And it looks like that actually was done with them in the background.
Maybe.
But it's kind of like, oh, well, they got out of the house. So then you know that, I wanted to say Mulder, but you know that Scully is good because he's like, oh, no, we didn't get them, guys. They ran out the back.
I know.
So
How could
like,
they possibly have done that?
Well, okay. So you're like, okay, what's happening? And immediately after Scully and his goons start chasing Gage Sidney, the accountant and his family, Walker and Trivette also pull up. And you're like, oh my gosh, we're going to get another just 4 fights at once. Twice in one episode? Oh my gosh, yes.
I have no idea what caused them to show up.
I mean, you know.
There's probably a scene before this where they're bickering about writing books and stuff too that we just glazed over.
Yep.
They spent the whole time just jamming out in the car.
Think we should go on over to the safe house? The bad guys have probably found him by this point. Okay, sure.
Or swing by.
So yeah, Walker and Trivette pull up on the scene, and as Bob was alluding to earlier on in the episode, this is actually something that takes place in the woods, in the Rangers element, and it does not disappoint.
So Gage and Sydney, they take the family to this bridge, and they're like in the woods. And I almost want to say I've seen the same bridge before in another episode. It seemed like a familiar thing. But anyway, they're in the woods, and they're like hiding out underneath this bridge. Who has the first fight?
I don't know. It's a lot of just Rangers popping up from behind trees and sucker punching people. Sucker punching like fat guys.
Yeah.
And Walker's entry is literally like Conan O'Brien would joke about Chuck Norris's leg being on a stick. and then being like thrown into the frame of the camera. That's like how his entrance was on this one bad guy.
That's pretty good.
And then the guy kind of got back up and he kept the fight going a little bit, and then he just mauls him down again, takes his gun, and then just throws it into the woods.
Yeah, he takes like the Uzi and tosses it.
Yeah.
And Gage takes the dude out. Trivette's punching some guy. And then Walker engages in hand-to-hand combat with Scully on the bridge with the helpless people underneath the bridge. And I don't know if you're aware, but Scully is an ex-prize fighter. So I was kind of expecting this to be a bit of a fight, but Walker polished him off like nothing. So yeah, Walker takes that dude out with some well-placed roundhouse kicks, and or spin kicks, if you will.
Yeah, per our conversation with Mondo last week, we're still dealing with the consequences of not knowing what a roundhouse kick is. So,
for the sake of argument, we're calling a roundhouse kick just a completely, totally over-the-top kick.
Yeah, there you go. Most commonly, for our purpose, a spin kick.
Yes. It's a kick not as a means of combat, but as a means of embellishment.
It's the cherry on top of the fight.
Walker takes out Scully like no sweat. And just as he does that, one of the goons discovers the family underneath the bridge, and they seem to be defenseless. There's no ranger there. But don't worry. Sydney comes up from behind a bush and like flips the guy over into the river. They take out all those bad guys in no sweat, and finally Lloyd Allen and his family are safe again, and they're allowed to testify. So we go into court. Alex walks in, and oh my God, what's up with that? Lloyd Allen's with her. He wasn't taken out by the bad guys. And so the sniveling lawyer comes up to Alex and is all like, actually, Miss Cahill, I think we'd like to talk about making a deal. And Alex goes, you can stick your deal. And then there's this weird, like, slow-mo of her as she walks to her table and sits down with this smug grin on her face.
Yeah, it's like a self-righteous moment that you're just like, oh. And then
really
that got
weird.
me thinking immediately. I'm like, she wasn't there when he said stick the deal. And she used the same verbiage. So really, all we can surmise is that the lawyer literally said, oh, yes, my client said that you can stick your deal.
Yeah, that guy's worth every dollar.
His mind is a steel trap.
For sure.
After that, we cut to a victory lunch at CD's, and Trivette is talking about the finer points of syndication. Something
really weird.
At this point, they must be very well aware of being in the later seasons of Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah, this is sort of an odd instance of them sort of breaking the fourth wall.
Pretty meta.
Yeah, where they're like, oh, Trivette, how's that book going? And he's all like, oh, I'm off the book. I'm on to
screenplays or something?
Yeah, screenplays, yeah. And he's like, what we do is we make a movie first, and then we go into TV. And after 5 years of TV, one magic word, syndication. And
Little did he know
"What?"
his show would be on syndication 20 years later.
They keep cutting back to Chuck Norris, and he's like grinning and nodding.
Yeah, he's like,
He's like, this is my escape plan from the entertainment industry. Syndication. Oh, man. And then the accountant who got rescued in the episode's like, need an accountant?
Lols.
And then everyone does like the really canned laughter. And then Trivette looks like he's laughing while he's trying to bite like a piece of meat or something. And then it freeze frames on that
yeah,
shot.
awkwardly. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, wow. That was a wild ride.
It sure was. And that about sums up this episode. We would once again like to give a shout out to our friend and collaborator, Adam Lauritsen, who's been drawing these epic Walkerstrations that we are posting on our social media. Be sure to check out his other art on Instagram at @ImaginationRunAmok. When we come back, it'll be time for us to each rate Safe House on a scale of 0 to 10 boots to the face, resulting in our patented Roundhouse Roulette episode ranking, complete results of which are available on our website, roundhouseroulette.com. Don't you dare go away.
Oh, hey. You got me at a very inconvenient time. A gang of flannel-wearing hoodlums are hunting me in the woods here. No bother. You can help me get my booby traps in place. Bear trap, check. We here at Roundhouse Roulette are powered by a love of pure, unfiltered Walker Texas Ranger, of a kind only found in the screams of evildoers. Well, what do you know? Just like that. Paired with the fellowship of listeners like you, it's been a blast following Walker's adventures this far. As you may have guessed, Bass Pro Shop is not yet one of our sponsors. I actually got the bear trap on the Dallas Craigslist here. So if you'd like to lend us a hand in spin kicking the podcast to new ridiculous heights, please share us with a friend or leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to further help us, we recently added some fresh new merchandise at roundhouseroulette.com. Or for a few bucks a month, you can help us bring the podcast to you every week on our Patreon page. Membership levels range from Criminal Mastermind to Texas Ranger and promise further Walker content, perks, and antics. All these things help us cover editing, artwork, blogs, and web hosting, and further our goal of delivering the light of Walker to the world. Most importantly, though, thank you for listening and making this ridiculous journey of ours worthwhile. Quick, cover me with leaves. Now go stand over there and lure them past me so I can roundhouse kick them into oblivion. It may be a bit, so you can put your earbuds back in and get back to the show.
Welcome back. So, what do we think of this episode?
So once again, after watching this and then writing down the notes and writing down the rating and then talking about it, that rating's going to change. I only had this
fine.
at a 5, but when we went through this episode and I realized how absurd these scenes were, that's going up to an 8. And it's just the fights, the sound effects, the pace, the woods. Although I hoped it went full woods.
Yeah,
that was my real hope. But yeah, man, this is awesome. I think my original cons were the plot and how it's just, this is so lame and there's nothing to it. And once I think about it, I go, wait, that's almost better.
It facilitated so much.
So yeah, another week, another time, I'm like, man, I'm not excited about this later season. And yeah, pleasantly surprised. Unbelievable. 8.
I'm right there with you, Bob. I give this one an 8 as well. Last week I gave Black Dragons a 9. This one has a lot of similarities, and it has more explosions and vehicle chases, but it doesn't sort of have the ridiculous throwing someone out a window or people jumping to their own deaths. The weirdness that existed in Black Dragons. But I will say that if someone is looking to understand what Walker's all about and see how ridiculous it is, this is certainly an episode they should check out. It's like a mini action movie. The sound effects are completely and totally over the top. And the plot is lame but also irrelevant. So
Yeah.
Give this one an 8 all day.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you guys. I was hoping, or not necessarily hoping, I wasn't sure if I liked this one better than last week's episode. In a way, I kind of enjoyed this one more. But as you say, the thing missing from this episode is the villain in this episode was really not, didn't really do anything and is very forgettable. Whereas in last week's episode, PK was pretty awesome. He was an awesome bad guy. And there were the ridiculous, absurd things that happened, which is not to say there wasn't an absurd helicopter chase in this one or absurd blowing up a house, but that's a little different. I'm going to go 8 as well. Excellent episode. Excellent episode.
All right, so math is easy on this one. Gives this episode a roundhouse rating of 8 boots to the face. Well, I think we can all agree that when the word safe is used in a Walker episode, we can only assume that nobody is in fact safe. But let us know what you think on social media or by emailing us at roundhouseroulette@gmail.com. When we come back, we'll spin the Roundhouse Roulette wheel and select next week's episode. And we're back. Bob, you ready to spin that wheel?
Another season 7. I think the wheel is warped.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Jacob's Ladder. Alex goes after the gang who torched the house of a murder witness and then shot the firefighters who tried to put out the blaze.
What? All right.
No.
It sounds like we're going to get a sociopath in this one. That's super crazy.
And looks like Alex might be going rogue.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. And until next week,
May the eyes of the Ranger be upon you.
When you're in Texas, look behind you. Oh, 'cause that's where the Ranger's gonna be.